Hi, welcome to Journeys with Jeff. I'm Jeff Grande, your host. Today we have a guest who's Gisela Abramski. She's from Germany. She was born and raised in Germany in 1928. And she is here to talk to us today about her life and her experiences. Gisela, thank you very much for being here with us today. Welcome. Thank you for being here and sharing your story and your journey. You were born in Oppeln, Germany?
Yes, I was.
In 1928.
Right.
And what was your family? Were you
My father was a merchant. He owned a store, a butcher supply, with a partner. And my mother helped out in the store. And I went to school at age 6. I think I went to preschool first. It's hard to remember now. But I started in a private all-girls school in 1934 and was there about 2.5 years when I was expelled as a Jew. We weren't allowed to go to private school any longer. From there I had to go to public school, where I went until Kristallnacht, which by the way is coming up very soon on November 9th. It was then November 9th, 1938, and I was 10 years old when they looted German stores, burned synagogues, threw out the prayer books and everything that was in it. I got ready for school that morning. My parents evidently did not know what was happening. So a friend of mine picked me up every morning. She had to pass my house to get to school. And I heard her crying outside the door, "The synagogue is burning, the synagogue is burning." When I opened the door, my parents listened to her, but still they decided to send us to school. When we got to school, the principal was standing in the door and told us, "You can come in and don't ever come back to my school." Of course, we were both 10 years old and started to cry and went home. And I decided to go with her to see what was doing at the synagogue. She lived past the synagogue. And of course, I saw people standing outside applauding, and every time they threw something out and burned it, because they evidently couldn't burn it inside. They were afraid of homes that were nearby. Everybody applauded, had a good time. So that was Kristallnacht. After that, everything changed for us. We Jewish children were no longer allowed to go to German schools. We were supposed to have a Jewish school, but this was a small town and a lot of Jews had left already. So we had no school, but we had a teacher that previously taught religion only. He was the one that started a class. There was one class, 8 grades in one class, and he taught us. So from age 10, by that time it was January, I was already 11, until I was 14, until 1942, I went to that school. But the last year for sure, it might have been even longer, I wasn't really learning much because I helped him teach the younger children. So I taught him to read and write, and that took away from my education too. In April 1944, we were no longer allowed to go to school and had to go and work outside. Had to clean the streets, had to clean the park, and what I remember was I cleaned the benches in the park. I had to take the snow off, the leaves off. On the benches they had signs, Jews not allowed to sit here. So I was good enough to clean it, but not good enough to sit on him. It was a terrible time. In the meantime, my father was also cleaning the street. The store had been sold previously because his partner left Germany on the boat that's supposed to have gone to Cuba. He was lucky enough to be taken in England. Some people were taken, England took some, France, Belgium, and Holland. Most of the people that went to Belgium, Holland, and France were sent to concentration camps. The people that were taken in by England survived, and he and his family survived in England. In the meantime, we were taken to Theresienstadt in actually we were a birthday present to Hitler. April 20th, 1943, we were sent on a transport to Theresienstadt. I was able to go with my parents because our Gestapo, that's the secret police, knew my father and wanted to do him a favor. I was 15 and only children until the age of 14 were allowed to go with their parents. I went with them to Theresienstadt, as I think I mentioned, April 20th or 21st, I believe, 1943. When our Gestapo escorted us, so we were on a regular train and did not really know what awaited us. We had no idea. When we arrived there, of course, they went back and different ghetto police took us over. While we left the trains and were told to line up, my father decided to go back into the train to retrieve, I guess, a piece of luggage. I never remember what it was. Anyhow, he went back. When he came out, they beat him up and set the German Shepherd on him. And when my mother saw that, she had a stroke. But since we didn't know what it was that was happening to her, we didn't know had she died or whatever was wrong with her. She was taken away and we were marched into the ghetto.
Let's just go back a little bit. Hitler gained power in 1933.
Right.
And Kristallnacht was 1938.
Right.
So during those years, 34, 35, 36, and through to the early 40s, did this happen incrementally, like a little
Slowly,
piece at a
very
time?
slowly.
Slowly?
Very slowly. Where we lived, Oppeln, is in Upper Silesia. There was a minority protection law in effect until 1937. So we weren't affected as much as people in the south of Germany or in other places.
Had you begun to hear stories in your town?
We heard, yes.
You heard things about what was going on with the Jews?
But you know, well, I was a little kid, but I know from experience, people are optimistic, kind of. They never believe how bad it could be, and we never thought how bad it's going to be. So.
And so in it was really not until after World War II started. Officially, the United States got into it in 1941.
Yeah, you got in.
And
yes.
so in 1943, 3, that was when it really started to hit your town and
Right,
affect you?
but we were the last ones out. That's why they made it a birthday present to Hitler. They made Upper Silesia free of Jews.
That was a
That
birthday
was in
present.
1943, yeah. There was a birthday present for him because his birthday is either on the 20th, 21st, I'm not sure.
So so then they came and they took you and your family, and where did you go?
To Theresienstadt, it's in the Czech Republic, now Czech Republic, then it was Czechoslovakia.
Was that a concentration camp?
It was, yeah, and it was also, it was it previously had been a garrison town where Czech people lived. There were 7,000 people that lived there. They evacuated them all over the Czech Republic, and they brought in, at times we were 43,000 Jews there. So it was so overcrowded, and there were so many diseases, and it was so filthy, and very little food. And they brought in a lot of older people, over 65, and they died they didn't have to kill them, they just died from exhaustion, from not eating. So every morning let me go back a little bit. When we arrived there, my mother had been taken away, we didn't know where she was. They assigned a room to my father in one of the buildings. They were like 2-story buildings. There were also army barracks there because it had been a garrison town. But my father was assigned a room in a building, and they wanted to put me in the children's home because they thought I was 14. I didn't have papers. My papers had been destroyed by our Gestapo. And I didn't tell them right away that I was 15, but still I believe until 16 you ended up in the children's home. But I refused to go. So they assigned me into a room with 9 old women. And there were bunk beds. The room was smaller than this, much smaller than this room. We had 5 bunk beds, so actually 10 beds. And there was like a board in front of the bed where you could sit. There were no chairs, no anything. Our belongings were kept in a suitcase, and how they had even room for that many suitcases, I don't know. Maybe there was room under the beds, I don't remember that. But anyhow, I lived there for 18 months in that room. Eventually we found out where my mother was, and we went to see her and found out she had had a stroke. She was paralyzed on the right side, and slowly, very slowly got better and was able to walk. Her mouth was crooked, but she never had to work there.
What was like the 18 months that you were there as a 15-year-old young lady? What was a typical day like?
Well, I had to go to work. First I worked in a youth garden. We carried soil onto the top of the army barracks and had to plant tomatoes. It was the most sour tomatoes I've ever tasted. I guess it can be done, or they didn't do it right. But anyhow, I was doing that. Eventually, I got a job working outside the ghetto, growing vegetables for the Germans. We didn't get them. Our food consisted of very few calories and was really unbelievably bad. We never got, we did get potatoes, sorry. There were, I don't know why, there were so many rotten potatoes. The whole camp smelled from those rotten potatoes. I left early in the morning and worked outside. We were escorted by the ghetto police, it was our people and Czech gendarmes. We went through the checkpoints, and the Czechs were so nice to us that they used to warn us whenever the Germans were going to be there when we came back. So in case we wanted to steal some spinach, which we stuffed into our pants. In those days I had some pants that had elastic on the bottom. And I remember once just going through the checkpoint, the elastic broke and the spinach fell out from one back, but they never blinked an eye, they never said anything. The Germans weren't there. Would the Germans have been there, would have been not very good for me. God knows what they would have done. I should mention that when we arrived in the ghetto, we were told what we may do and what we may not do. Like if we were on a sidewalk and a German came by, we had to go out into the gutter and bow. The Germans always walked around with German shepherds. I love dogs, but for many, many years afterward, I was afraid of dogs, which made me feel bad, but it wasn't the breed, it was the way they brought them up.
Were there any examples of some of these ghetto police, the guards? Were they all harsh, and did you ever come across somebody who was like a little bit more, I don't know, understanding or compassionate?
The Germans, never.
Yeah. None of them?
I never had any anybody of the Germans being compassionate. In my, what I experienced, the Czechs were great. And we also had our own ghetto police, which was a joke. They weren't able to do anything, but they were there just for show. I don't know if you're familiar, but they brought in the Red Cross into the ghetto. They cleaned it up, they whitewashed the buildings. The old people were not allowed on the street. People like I, a 16-year-old by that time, was allowed out. It was in 1944 when they came. And they found everything in good order. They didn't really see what was going on, that people are starving, that people are dying of infectious diseases. You name the disease, we had it. And there was no medication, and kids died. There weren't really as many kids there as there were old people.
What did you have, like, how often did you eat? One meal a day?
Well, we picked up a meal in the late afternoon when we came back. Now, I don't remember how we got the breakfast, but we did get something in the morning, some what they called coffee, which wasn't coffee. It was cigarettes, I think it's called, and some bread. The bread usually was wet. Now, my father was very resourceful, and when the first year we were there at my birthday, he said to me, I feel so bad. Your birthday is coming up, and I can't get you anything, but would I be able to? What would you like? And I said, I would like to eat enough so I wouldn't be hungry. And he started to cry, and ever from that day on, I don't know how he managed. There were some Czech people that were in our building. He got their lunch, so he got the soup, and he sold the soup, and he got bread instead. And my mother and I had to give him our bread, which was fresh and wet. And he gave us old bread. He had a suitcase full of bread, and he gave us the old bread because it's easier to digest, number one. Number two, you have more. So I don't remember ever being that terribly hungry anymore. I had enough bread.
By the time that you were there, you lived in that little room with these 10 other
With-
people.
Right.
Were you separated from your mother and your father?
My mother, once she came out of the sick bay, I wouldn't call it a hospital because they did have doctors there, but no medication. When she came home, she slept with me on the same bunk because there were only 10 bunks there. And so at times we were 11 people in that room. Yes, I stayed there until the very end, until I was deported. Actually, my father was taken before us in September 1944. He was taken first to Auschwitz, from Auschwitz to Dachau, and they killed him December 24, 1944. My mother and I were taken in October 44. Actually, I should say my mother was taken. When I arrived, they told me that I was not in the transport, that I was to stay in the ghetto. And I knew somebody that knew somebody that knew the head of the ghetto, who was Jewish. And we went to him and I asked him, I brought somebody else's name. I asked to be exchanged for that girl so I could go with my mother. I did not know where we were going. When my father left, they said the men were going to Hamburg to rebuild the city because it had been bombed by the English. And when we left, when my mother left, they said that the women were going to join the men that had previously been taken, and they were going to Hamburg. So when I asked him to be put on the transport with my mother, he said to me, "Do you know where you're going?" I was a dumb kid, and I said, "Yes." So he says, "You know you're an idiot," just like that in German. And he exchanged my name for another girl whose mother was still in Theresienstadt and whose father was a brain surgeon in Prague. They had not deported him. He was, even though he was Jewish, he had to work for the Germans in Czechoslovakia. Once we got on the train, though, I knew where I was going.
And that was where?
Auschwitz,
You and your mother?
with my mother. Now, my mother was actually in the hospital at the time when she was taken. They took her on a stretcher into the train. When we got to Auschwitz, she had to get out of the train on her own. Leaning on me, she got out. How she did it, I don't know.
Well, by this time, 1944, the war was not going very well for the Germans.
Exactly.
Well, what were they doing? Is that why they were moving people around?
Yeah, they tried to move everybody. They tried to kill as many as they possibly could. They killed my father at the end of December.
So that
And
was
my mother, I don't know if she made it into the gas chamber or not. I hope she didn't. We were separated immediately when we arrived in Auschwitz.
So their objective at that point was to eliminate as many Jews as possible.
Right.
And you were taken to you were taken to Auschwitz?
Auschwitz,
With
yes.
your mother.
Right.
And then what happened during the time you were there? What happened? What happened that you were able to survive that and live to tell the story?
Unfortunately, you can survive a lot. My mother used to say, God shouldn't send you as much as you can take, and she was right. We were separated. She had to go left. I went right. I immediately followed her. Somebody pulled me back, hit me a little bit. That was okay. And when I saw, I cannot really describe what went on arriving in Auschwitz. It was on the train station, it was mayhem. The Germans were there. The capos, the Jewish guys that were, they were prisoners, but they put them up to pull us out of the trains and yell at us. As a matter of fact, one came over to me and said, when they ask you how old you are, tell them you are 17 or older. And when I heard that, I thought, well, he probably knows that if I say I'm younger, they'll let me go with my mother. I didn't know where she was going. I should mention that arriving in Auschwitz, there was a big chimney and there was fire coming out besides the smoke. And the odor there was unbelievable. For years and years, I smelled burnt flesh. So while we were standing there and I saw all the goings on, I figured, oh, they're not watching me. And again, I tried to get over to the other side to be with my mother. And this time they really beat me up and put me over on the other side. A guy, which may or may not have been Mengele, I don't really know, looked us all over, and we were slowly leaving the station and marched into a place where there was a big room. We were told to get completely naked, take off our clothes, fold it nicely, and come out. And they looked us over again, maybe to their pleasure, maybe because they were looking if we were healthy enough. But that's probably when they picked me for work. Now, our hair was shorn. I was not tattooed because we found out later they didn't want to waste their time. So as of the middle of October 1944, they didn't tattoo anymore.
Did you ever see your mother again?
Never saw her again. One of the prisoners, when I was crying and, saying, when am I going to see my mother? She says, your mother's coming out up there, pointing to the chimney.
To the smoke
to
coming
the
out.
chimney.
This concludes the first part of Gisela's journey. Please join us next time for the rest of her story.